Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, How a KFC Franchisee Boosted Employee Retention and Filled the Gaps in Their Staff. I'm Laura Michaels, the editor of Franchise Times, and I'm glad to have with me today Paul Accordino, VP of Operations for KFC Franchise Group, O Incorporated, and AJ Richichi, founder and CEO of Sprockets. Together, they'll be discussing current roadblocks franchisees are facing in their labor crunch, why it's time to rethink the way you hire, and the real changes that O Inc. made in its hiring process to come out on top. With that, AJ, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, Laura and Franchise Times, thank you for having us, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. So at Sprockets, we are incredibly passionate and excited to talk with multiple unit operators about their hiring challenges. We're obsessed with the labor market. We want to know what's going on, what general managers are saying, and what you're seeing as a HR professional. So if you have time, and we're happy to give $25 gift card to earn it, please email me at aj@sprockets.ai. Schedule a time to talk with me on March 22nd or 23rd, and we'll be giving you a $25 gift card for all of your help. So let's talk a little bit about hiring. Hiring right now feels more challenging than it's ever been. I'm actually going to pass this off to Paul to talk to a little bit about the front lines. What are you seeing, Paul, that's especially challenging right now, and what's happening in restaurants today in staffing?
Yeah. First of all, thank you everybody for having me. Hopefully this will be a benefit to those listening and watching. Certainly, coming, it's kind of post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I think things were fairly good. It was still a little tight and competitive, and then obviously going through the pandemic, all bets were off, and things became extremely challenging. Restaurants were closing down, and we were losing staff left and right. Couldn't retain them. We were lucky enough to have a drive-through attached to our building, so the demand for for help never went away, quite frankly. So we were we tiptoed through that a little bit, and then kind of coming out of the pandemic, everybody's still challenged, quite frankly. Labor costs are up. For us, they're up 30% from where they were just 3 years ago. So that's a significant increase, which affects the bottom line. So getting the best people and remaining and getting staff, so you have folks because the demand for sales for us, quite frankly, is still there. But having folks available to wait on the guests and make sure they're being taken care of, that's the whole game. And we struggled, and we're looking for alternatives until we came across AJ with Sprockets. And we're 6 months in, but for the most part, it's been a great relationship, and thus far, again, it's only 6 months, but all the results we're fairly happy, and we think we've got a nice long runway here. So the challenges are still there, but you don't want to go it alone. We certainly didn't. We tried that way, and it just doesn't work.
And Paul, maybe talk a little bit about how labor has shifted since COVID for you. So yeah. I'll speak to it quickly from an HR tech perspective, sure. And then hopefully you can give us kind of boots on the ground view of it. Yeah. So I saw over the last 2-3 years a tremendous shift in candidate behavior, where before COVID there was 3% unemployment. During COVID there was 15% unemployment, and now we're back down to 3% unemployment. So a bigger shift in the Great Depression twice in a 24-month period. And that shocked the system. And as an HR technologist, someone that builds kind of these workflows, I can tell you that the demand from customers was, especially during the labor crunch, was remove all friction, remove all friction, remove all friction. Make it as easy as possible to apply to jobs as possible, okay, or as fast as possible. And that's actually created an interesting challenge, because now, particularly with one button apply, before COVID, somebody could in one sitting maybe apply to, 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs in one sitting. But with one click, somebody on their phone can press apply to KFC, apply to McDonald's, apply to Bojangles. And so in my eyes, it's created a need for instant notifications more It's created a need to do better screening and created just new challenges. But curious to kind of hear your thoughts on what you're seeing there.
Yeah, I think you have it exactly right. I mean, we went through a point where nobody was hiring, or nobody was applying rather, and that can be very frustrating to the management teams, the kids in the restaurants, because you constantly have flow and things come up, and turnover to a certain extent is part of the business. If we can get folks 90 days, we can get to them a year. But folks, certainly folks have to apply. And then kind of post pandemic, the applications they increased, and they increased dramatically, but it was almost to a flood, and we didn't have any. There was really no system in place that would weed those out. So it's almost like it became, where do you start? And then you start calling people, and the frustration at the restaurant level is extremely high when you've got 10 applicants and you call them, and of the 10, you could probably get in touch with 3. Of the 3, one shows up, and then it's a 50-50 chance whether or not they show up for orientation. It's a lot of work to not get a hire, to be perfectly honest with you. So having a metric in place there, with a lot of folks use some sort of survey or whatever to the applicant when they interview. But sometimes that's a very touchy game, because sometimes those are too long and the applicant just opts out and doesn't finish it. And if it's too short and it doesn't touch the right stuff, then it becomes sort of meaningless. So there's a lot of challenges with that.
And summed up in our conversations, I put these 3 bullet points: is hiring managers don't have time to properly screen applicants in real time, right? More than anyone, hiring managers, they're on the cashier, they're training in store, they're doing a million things, and to be able to in real time get to applicants, screen them effectively, and make a call is just an impossible thing to ask, right? And so stuck in an old process that may have worked pre-COVID may be a little bit outdated, and the technologies used to do that might be a little bit more ineffective than they were previously. Yeah. So when I think, Paul, I'm obsessed with this problem, and our whole company that's developed specifically for QSR, we think about the challenge a little bit differently. Like, we want, and you've seen us give the power of the screen to before a general manager gets notified. So when a notification comes through to a general manager in one of your locations, there's AJ Richichi just applied. He or she scored a 9 out of 10. Like, here's their contact information. And our hope, and I'm hoping you might be able to speak a little bit to it, is one, it makes it so it's instantaneous. Person applies, you instantly get notified, where somebody, while they're fixing a fry machine, or in your case, fried chicken, can look at their phone, see that a new applicant came in. The pre-screen, there's some pre-qualification where there's a scoring system. And most importantly, action, right? Somebody can press the phone number on the text message, get in touch with the applicant, and then invite them to come in. And in some cases, and maybe you might have an example of this, like, hey, do you want to start work tomorrow? Do you want to pick up tonight's night shift? Move faster, right? Give your general managers more power. Any additional context there, Paul?
Well, again, folks are going to apply. Typically, most of the we're in the QSR business, and I'm sure many of the listeners here are today as well. If you're in the QSR business, we're basically fishing out of the same pool to a large extent. I mean, once you hire somebody, your culture will kind of define your relationship with that applicant, now employee, and how that training and development, you kind of define it. But getting them, we're all fishing out of the same pool. That's the reality. So when somebody applies, whoever gets back to them first and has a genuine conversation and shows genuine interest, and sees if there's actually a match there, I think is ahead of the game. So response time is critical. Having it tied to our RGM's cell phones the feedback has been over the moon. It's been very, 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 very good, and it allows folks, as you said, to be extremely responsive, get back first. Is it silver bullet? No, but a lot of times our managers, they just get weighted down. That's the reality. They have so many things going on. They know they need to hire. They want to hire. They want to spend time with their current employees, and they just, they struggle with, when to find time. As much as we try to coach and teach, organization, schedule management, and all of that, it's very challenging. When it's in your face on a phone instantaneously, it allows them to be fanatical about response time, which is absolutely a key component to recruitment in today's market in the QSR business, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a timeline of our relationship with O Inc. So it's been relatively short, right? You said 6 months to be in the call, signed on in August, went live about a week later. We take pride in our ability to onboard customers quickly. Hopefully you felt that white glove service and, saw that support. Within the first week, we did a first pools campaign, which we'll talk about, to help increase applicant flow. And then February 10th, your team and my team got together and we did a retention report, right? Where we looked at, before Sprockets, what your 90-day retention was, what your turnover rates were. And we looked at after Sprockets of, are we increasing applicant flow? Very important. Are we reducing ghosting? Very important. And most importantly, are we helping increase retention? Because the more retention you have, as you know, the less hires you have to make and the less dependent that we become on this tumultuous hiring and labor market. It just seems like it's changing every 12 months. Yeah. So, from here, we could skip this one because I know, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Let's get straight into the numbers. So when you see this sheet, Paul, what do you see?
Well, the numbers, the numbers don't lie. There's been an increase in retention. I think that is tied very much to the quality of the applicant, and I attribute that to a large extent to the to the psychometric evaluation, the survey, that gets taken, that you folks used our own top performers to create the kind of the formula, if you will, which I think is a key point that I hope you get a chance to talk about.
Yep.
But the higher quality candidate, you're in tied with the fact that you're constantly hiring, and the emotional currency that you get with your management team when they can go into their hiring bank and they see a ton of applicants. Every day there's constant flow in there, 3-4 applicants. That keeps spirits high and allows your folks to stay engaged. But out of the gate, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. We certainly are in a better place than where we were pre-Sprockets, and we're not going to it's undeniable. So.
Right. No. And so, so a little bit of context into what Sprockets does, and thanks for sharing that experience for those listening. So really simply put, we'll go into a group like O Inc. and we'll build top performer benchmarks. So at the 9 locations that Paul has, he has a number of people that he would, if he could, throw in a cloning machine and say, I'll hire this person, this person, this person, again and again and again. You send them via text message a 90-second survey that on their phone they just complete. And from there, we learn what those people have in common. Like, these are the successful people at O Inc. that get along with culture, that stay long-term, that are constantly top-performing people. And then when somebody comes through, and what's your applicant tracking system, Paul? Use People Matter, I believe.
We do. Yep. We use People Matter.
So when people come through People Matter, they instantly get matched. These are candidates get matched against that particular benchmark. And we give all of those applicants a score of 1 to 10 based on their likeness to that successful group and the probability that those people will be successful long-term. Again, these are people that show up, work on time, don't steal money out of the cash register, and get along with the culture. And so as soon as somebody applies, they get matched with this very sophisticated technology, and your general manager gets a text message that we've been talking about saying, AJ Richichi just applied, he scored a 9, here's a number you can call on. So your GMs move faster with more confidence and can hire people with the highest likelihood to succeed long-term. And we also have this feature that Paul used a little bit later in the subscription, but curious to hear your thoughts on this, Paul, of pools. So pools is a answer to the ghosting problem that we've been talking about during this presentation. So right now, Paul said if you reach out to 10 people, 3 people will actually like respond to you. And the question becomes, what do you do with the 7 that do not respond to you? And today, what happens is they go into your candidate graveyard, into People Matter or into Indeed, and you never talk to them again. And it's a very simple line. This person shows interest, and then boom, you either hire them or get a hold of them if you can, or you never talk to them ever again. And I've challenged my team, and what we've built from a technology perspective is, what happens if you could translate this line here into a circular motion, where everyone that drops from into the candidate graveyard, you nurture them, you text them, you stay in touch with them. You don't hold it against them that they didn't take your job because your general manager didn't get to them fast enough or the pay wasn't right at that particular time, but you constantly keep them in your candidate community. So really simply put, what Sprockets Pools is you import all of your past applicants that didn't come work for you, that ghosted you because of the one-click apply. You enroll them into a nurture campaign, all automated via Sprockets. And then every couple weeks, what happens is Sprockets pings that person. Hey, do you want to come work at KFC? Hey, we just increased wages. Do you want to reapply? Y or N? And then via text message, that person who receives it feels recruited. And you're not competing against all of their QSRs because you're contacting me. And with one button, I can get re-enrolled in the application process. And then a general manager calls me within minutes. That's really impactful and challenging kind of the way that we do hiring today. And most importantly, what gets me really excited is it cuts your sourcing costs in half. Because instead of paying Indeed again for top of funnel metrics, you're paying for applicants that you already own, that are sitting stagnant in your database. And every single person that comes through, even if you don't get them the first time, that's okay. You can re-enroll them, create a circular motion for your hiring process. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, I think you covered it. I think you covered it really well. But one thing to keep in mind with that pooling technology is you already have an advantage over everybody else because they've already shown interest in you because they've already applied to you at one time. So you're ahead of the game. And obviously, folks that are in the applicant graveyard, I like that. I'm gonna have to use that. So many of those folks are not folks that were turned down. I mean, those are folks that for whatever reason just didn't come aboard because of timing or whatever. I mean, I know in our business, we hire more than 2 people a week per restaurant. The training is just not very good, so we kind of cap that. So if an applicant goes 2 or 3 weeks and doesn't hear back, in the last 6 months, they're probably gone and ended up in the graveyard. So there you go. Re-engaging those folks are a great pool.
Yeah, and I think too, what's interesting is as we've gone deeper into this feature set, and it's been very successful across all different brands, is we're starting as we get into people's database, seeing like as an example, O Inc. Let's say you have one in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we go into that database and we find the same name again and again. Like AJ Richichi applied in September, AJ Richichi applied again in December, AJ Richichi applied again to that same location in May and April. And as I've thought more about it and our teams kind of diagnose, what we're finding is these are people who are in high turnover industries that every 3 months job hop. And when they enter the market, they always reapply to the same jobs on Indeed time and time again, which is okay, right? Like I think that's just an occurrence in our space. But the hard thing for O Inc. and other customers is you're paying for that same person 4 times, 5 times in 1 year. And with the pay-per-click and pay-per-applicant, if you don't get to people fast enough on Indeed, like that's a whole different story is how Indeed's model works. But you're penalized for that person reapplying, even if you reject that person the first time. That's and right. Whether you like it or not, there's a $20 bill gone because your job was open and they applied. Yeah. And so with pools, the way we think about it is, if you've been around long enough, you likely, especially in smaller towns, have seen almost everybody that's available. like in that space. And there is like, new kids that turn 16 and people who graduate out of the hourly workforce. Like, yeah, there are instances of that, but majority wise, your next, 5 classes of hires, they're sitting in your applicant graveyard right now. And now, our hope is that Sprockets gives you the tool to be able to, re-engage them, instantly screen them and get them in the hands of your general managers right away.
Yeah.
So, to that note, here's just some statistics. We work with quick service restaurants, C-stores, hotels, all hourly. We take a lot of pride in reducing turnover, spending less time in the hiring process, right? So your general managers can focus more on revenue generation, customer success, not so much like, is this person going to show up for an interview, or, do I have to hire and train somebody new? And overall reduction of turnover. That's the end of our slides. I'll just remind the group that, anybody that reaches out to me and schedules a time to chat in the next 24 hours, we'll be giving a $25 gift card. Feel free to do whatever you'd like with that. Maybe put it towards Indeed, buy diapers for your family. That's what I would do, because I have 2 kids under 2 right now in the chaos. But Paul, anything else before we send people off?
No, I think, if you are listening to this because there's a ton of different options out there. AJ and his team, I think, have scratched, have not only scratched the surface, but frankly, I think they understand the market and they understand your needs as an operator. So I think it's certainly worth a discussion. We are very grateful for the relationship that we've had with him, and the results speak for themselves. There is no silver bullet out there, but if you try to go it alone, I think we would not do that again. It's much better to partner with somebody who has the technology and time to help you in an area where, frankly, we as a small franchisee, we just don't have the time or the manpower to put towards it. So we're very grateful for the relationship.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing your insight today. And when we have a couple minutes at the end, I always like to ask a couple of questions that come up for me as I'm watching the presentation. Paul, I'd love to start with you and just ask you to illuminate a little bit what your managers have thought of this tool, what they like about it, and just how that integration process has gone. Because I know sometimes when the upper level is introducing what they think is a helpful feature, the folks in the restaurants don't always feel the same way.
Oh, it's another task, Laura. It's another task. Something else I have to do, right? Add to my day that I'm trying to, pack 10 pounds of dirt in a 5-pound bag already. But no, it's made their job easier, quite frankly. I mean, the immediate notification, it really starts. I'll break it down with really 3 things real quickly to answer your question. First, again, it is emotionally uplifting to go into your database and see a constant flow of applicants. That is extremely important for today's manager. Second, the idea that they are seeing folks immediately to their phone that have scored a certain level on the assessment, so that we already said, hey, this is a very good applicant. This is a potential applicant that could fit into your current culture. You need to call them, and the phone and the text messaging allows them to do that. Last but not least, because that's a higher quality candidate, they tend to be easier to train. Quite frankly, they pick up on things. They're responsive. They're engaged. They show up, and it's turned out that folks are really hitting that 90-day mark. And for us, that is that's the Mendoza line for us. If we get somebody for 90 days, most of the time they actually stay a year. Most of our turnover in our business happens in the first 30 days. So if we can get out of that, we're going to be in a good place. And thus far, the results have been very good. Yeah.
Wonderful. That is wonderful to hear. And AJ, just to you, this is something that always comes up from the audience. Is could you illuminate the pricing structure a little bit? Just give a little look into how that works with a multi-unit QSR business.
Yeah. So I'm not dodging the question, but it kind of depends on a few different things. One, the size of the group, the duration of the contract, whether it's an annual agreement or a monthly agreement, as well as the volume of how big is your location? Is it a 150 location, Chick-fil-A, or is it a 20 location or a 20 person, Wendy's? So we do a by month, by rooftop costing structure, anywhere between, $59 a month and $129 a month per location.
Perfect. Thank you. I know that's always information our folks love to hear about. And so with that, do either of you have any final thoughts you'd like to share before we sign off?
No, thank you for the time. And thanks, Paul, for joining. And thank you, Laura and Franchise Times, for having us out. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, just thank you so much. And hopefully everybody gets something out of this. But reach out to AJ if you need some help.
Well, thank you so much, Paul and AJ, for joining us and for sharing your insight. And to our audience, this information, the webinar, will be available on franchisetimes.com on our resources page if you'd like to rewatch it or share it. And I appreciate our audience again for joining us today. Thank you.